August 2021. These were the scenes at the Kabul International Airport. Thousands of Afghans desperately attempting to flee after the Taliban seized control of the country. Foreign governments deployed their armed forces to evacuate their citizens and some Afghans. Many fear the Taliban would punish them or worse for their activities during the years the hardline movement was out of power. A year on, Kabul's airport is calm. But for those who stayed behind, what has become of life in Afghanistan? A catastrophic humanitarian crisis has gripped the war-ravaged country since last year. Poverty has been made worse by drought and inflation. But even though Afghanistan's plight began well before August 2021, the Taliban's takeover has pushed the country over the precipice. Countries have cut off many development programs and have frozen Afghanistan's foreign reserves. Before 2021, international aid represented 40% of the country's GDP and financed 80% of the budget. Poverty is pushing Afghans to make once unthinkable decisions. Earlier in the year in Herat, Nuruddin was left jobless and debt-ridden. He felt he had no choice but to sell his kidney to the highest bidder.
آرات ناراحتی بود. خوشم نبودیم که کار کنیم. همین کار ناراحتی برفتیم دیگه. وجود خود بدادیم. دل ممکن نمیشد بدیم. مجبور در خاطر همین چیزی فشار بود.
Some have even more harrowing stories.
دا غز مالور د اتو کال انجیل د 3 لک روپۍ ما د مجبورې ورکړې د بلجو د پورولو د لاس نه نو سبا چې غالک راځي برته ځما څخه بیا د دونی کا کنجلې ما د مجبورې ورکړې دا خو نو شکر نه و چې ما د دونی کا کنجلې ورکړې وای خدای رسول خدای نه وای چې دونی کا کنجلې واخې ته خرڅ کړي.
The United Nations says Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis is the worst in the world. Nearly 20 million people, almost half the population, are facing acute hunger. Although the situation is dire, many have found some relief since the war ended.
نه تا میری نه بالا میری نه تو با نه تیاره چیزی نیستم خودت کار میکنی در خانه پس میمیشینی میری ما تو تاشو کویای تفری خودت خوشحالی است زمینم چیز گفته نمیتونه میری پایانا میری بالا کس گفته نمیتونه وزغو تیاره میمیده تو میشه تیاره میشه کجا پت میشدی تو غریب طرف خدا پای دیگه خچارا نبود اگه میمرد خونه میرفتی دیگه کار خدا میگرفتی نه.
The United States and its allies have tried to push the Islamists to reform, locking the country out of the global banking system until they do so. Analysts say cracks are opening in the Taliban ranks over how much change their leaders can tolerate. The group's hardline core is against any significant ideological change that could be viewed as a sign of submission.
موږ دلته نه وینو چې د خلکو په غوښتنو کم تغیر راغلی وي مخکې د خلک مسلمانان او هڅ مسلمانان دي د اسلام په دایره کې ټوله غواړي چې خپل ژوند وکړي دا اصلا د نړۍ په خواهشات کې تغیرات راغلي دي چې مخکې د شلو کالو په دوران کې نړۍ په خاص ډول امریکا او یا د هغوی ټلوالې دا غوښتل چې افغانان خپل مستعمره جوړ کړي بس د اشغال لاندې راولي بدای حالت چې افغانانو چې شل کاله مخته غوښتنې وسمه غوښتنې دي ضرورتونه هغه ضرورتونه دي.
However, some things have changed. Officials in Kabul have embraced technology. Televisions were banned before. Now, the few Afghans who have access can use the internet and social media. But experts are wary that recent policy changes are just for show.
There is a tendency toward tokenism in the sense of the Taliban wanting to keep in mind an international audience that it is trying to win over to an extent, and it wants to sort of project this idea that it is more moderate, but obviously it's a very complex picture. And just because we hear about a few examples in one place doesn't mean that something different is not happening elsewhere.
The rights of Afghan women and girls are a major concern. In March 2022, the Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada ordered secondary schools for girls to be closed just hours after reopening them. But the move hasn't hampered Afghan women's thirst for learning. Secret schools have sprung up across the country. Like many women, 20-year-old Nafisa has to lie to the men in her family about her whereabouts.
طالب است و مرا نمیمان که دیگه می آمده ما دا صنفش مرا از مکتب ما نکرد مرا مکتب نمیمان با بانه مدرسه آمدم دیگه این حالا ما میایم بیادر می تو خبر نیست که ما با کورس میرم یک مادر مرا حمایت میکنه.
In Kabul, this teacher was able to turn her storeroom into a classroom with the support of her husband.
باز ما از خاطر که دخترها مسلمه ور نشن دخترها ایندی خوبتر از ما داشته باشن در این وقت شاید مسلمه ور دخترهای خود را رستی کنن. ما 12 ساله نامزاد شدم بس با او خاطر که ما زیاد زحمت کشیدم به خاطر درس اینا مسلمه زحمت نکشن.
The Taliban say the decision to close the schools was made because of a technical issue, and that classes will resume once a curriculum based on Islamic rules is defined. In the 20 years between the Taliban's 2 reigns, girls were allowed to go to school and women were able to work in all sectors. Now, UN experts say the Taliban are attempting to steadily erase women and girls from public life. Women have been ordered to cover their faces in public, preferably with a full-body burqa, and can no longer travel on long trips without a male relative to escort them. Although women are allowed to study in university, classes are segregated. While access remains difficult for women, others like young Taliban member Gul Aga Jalali are pursuing a second chance at getting an education. The 23-year-old is studying English and has enrolled in a computer science course in Kabul.
هغه وخت چې مثلا ضرورت ټوپک ته و هغه وخت تیر شو او ضرورت کلم او کمپیوټر ته دی انګلیسي ته دی ځکه دنیا چې ده او ډیر پرمختللې ده ضرورت ټکنالوژي ته لري ضرورت پرمختګ ته لري غواړم چې مثلا پانتون خیر شروع کوم د پانتون ورسته انتو ماستری دکترات کج پورې زده کړې وکم.
Hundreds of fighters have returned to school, either of their own accord or because they were pushed by their commanders. Though more conservative clerics are sceptical about modern education, these Taliban students say they want to use it to help develop the country. Some of the younger generation even have differing views when it comes to women. At least on a superficial level, the Taliban appear to have changed in some respects. But most in the West remain sceptical. The closing of secondary schools for girls shattered all hopes of restoring international money flows by the West, and relations with international diplomats have since suffered major setbacks. Leading economists have recently asked the US to hand over to Afghanistan $7 billion in frozen central bank reserves to allow the country to get back on its feet. But as Afghanistan reels under a devastating economic crisis, and with winter looming, a lack of food security and freezing temperatures is set to put even more pressure on the leaders of one of the world's poorest countries.